Hey guys, John here with BD Diesel. We're going to do an actuator install on a 6.7 Cummins. You may have experienced check engine light and then your exhaust brake not working, maybe a little bit slower turbo spooling, touch of smoke. Get your scan tool out, you get a P003A. That's usually related to your turbocharger actuator. We're going to go through and swap it out with one from BD Diesel here. It's an upgraded unit to the newer Holset style. Show you what it's all about. Let's get it done. All right, we started off with disconnecting the negative battery terminals so we don't short anything out. We got the coolant drain in right now, and got the truck set up on the 2-post lift here. So we're gonna get it up in the air, pull the passenger wheel off next and the inner liner so we can get access to the actuator. Now that the wheel and the inner fender are out, we're going to locate the connector for the actuator. It's a little bit tricky. It's in here by the oil filter. It's a gray connector with a red lock tab. You slide the lock tab to the side, press the button, and we'll be able to disconnect it. Then we'll fish it out of her way. That's what she looks like. Now, one tip that we could offer here is before we unbolt the actuator, we'd remove the banjo bolt from the top coolant line here and just shot a little air down there just to get all the residual coolant out of the reservoir here, because when you pull the actuator off, some spills out and gets inside the motor and it can lead to a false reading of like a coolant leak into there. To remove the actuator, we have 4 5mm socket heads, 2 at the very top up here, and then 2 long ones down here. All right, now it's time to unbox the BD actuator. This is their cost-effective solution for repairing these Holset turbochargers. Our install manual, adapter harness, a little bit of hardware, and a real nice shiny actuator. Going over the differences between an early and late model actuator here. Physically, they look a little bit different on the outside. Inside, pretty much the same. So when using the late model actuator here, if you have a late model truck, you just plunk it on like so, you'd have the correct connector on your truck already. On the early models, we supply you with an adapter harness. Connects here, and then matches up like the old one to the truck side. I find it easier to take this harness and get it into the truck first because it's down by the oil filter. And then once we get the actuator in there, it'll be nice and easy to clip onto. Now, these are some alignment tools. This is going to be used to set up the cage position before we put the motor back on. And then these guides will go in place of the 2 long 5mm hex bolts. So ensure you slide the motor on nice and straight. So they're just for install, then we'll remove and put bolts back in their place. So we just fished the new harness in here. We're gonna reconnect it to the OE harness until we hear a click, and then we're gonna slide this red locking tab over just to secure it in place. Using the alignment tool we showed you earlier, we're gonna adjust this cage lever over in front of the hole and get this dowel pin. And that'll line you up before you put your actuator on. In some cases, your turbo may not have this, this hole to use the alignment dowel pin, in which case you would line up the lever arm with these stamp marks here. Now these 2 longer ones I was talking about earlier, they just go in here, these bottom 2 holes. just hand tight. Now we're gonna get the new actuator, plug that in there, like so. We'll take some of the supplied grease here and put it up on the teeth of the gear. All right, now that the new BD actuator is in place, we need to lower the truck back down, reconnect the negative battery terminals, and get our scan tool hooked up. We have our laptop-based scan tool hooked up to the OBD port now. Ignition's turned on, so we're just gonna hook everything up. There's many different types of scan tools out on the market. Just make sure you find one that's capable of doing the pre-align and calibration setup for the actuator. We're going to go into system tests or miscellaneous functions. Basic system tests on this one. I'm going to scroll down to the VGT actuator pre-align. This is the first part of the test. We'll select that. It's going to ask you if you've connected the new actuator. Yeah, we're all there. Please click the next button of the test. So we'll do that. And here it does a little sweep of the motor and it says we got a pass, so we can move on to the next part of the test. Okay, now we're back at the actuator ready to install. So we got our guide pins here. We'll line those up with the bottom two holes. Just carefully wiggle that thing in there so it seats down. Install the new short bolts into the top. Wind them in a little bit. At this point, we'll remove our dowels. And install the fresh long bolts. Snug these down in a crisscross pattern until the seal compresses. You want to torque those down to 80 inch-pounds. Now that you've secured the actuator onto the turbocharger, we're going to go back to the scan tool and run the second part of the test. Okay, now we're back at the scan tool. We are going to back into basic tests. Scroll all the way down here to VGT actuator self-calibration. Again, giving us a bunch of warnings. Make sure we put the actuator on. And we'll hit the arrow to make it happen. And we got ourselves a pass. So from here we can go back and put the coolant back in, our inner fender, our wheel, and get ready for a test drive. Well, we're wrapping up the install of the BD actuator on the 6.7 Cummins. Real easy install, about 35-40 minutes. For more information, check out bddiesel.com.